The Islanders just robbed the entire NHL. We've been saying that a lot recently, but this is perhaps the Islanders' biggest heist yet because they are stealing from the New York Rangers, amongst other teams, as the Islanders have officially signed Maxim Shabanov to his entry-level contract. This is a huge deal for the Islanders. This is a prospect who has a ton of potential in the NHL at just 24 years old. We're going to break it all down on this episode of Islanders Digest, and also talking about another key signing the Islanders made today for insane value. This has truly been an incredible offseason for Mathew Barzal. Before we get into it, we notice that 66% of you who watch these videos have not yet subscribed to the channel. So if you're an Islander fan, you want more Islanders content just like this, what are you waiting for? Be sure to hit subscribe. It's free. Now let's get into talking about this Shabanov contract because this is so exciting for Islander fans and really the NHL, as we're going to get a chance to see this player play on a team that is actually looking like they might have a shot to make the playoffs. And I've been talking about this a lot in my past two videos. With all the moves that Barzal has made in the offseason, this Islander team has really gone from one that was likely not going to be that relevant next year, which was disappointing coming from someone who is an Islander fan, to now seeing this team turn into something that can get really exciting really fast. But first, we just have to talk about Shabanov and what he brings to the Islanders. He is an incredible playmaker and frankly a really good goal scorer. And Islander fans, I highly encourage you to check out his highlights after watching this video, because everything I can say about this player is not going to do him justice. His hands are some of the most incredible hands I've really watched in hockey highlights. And one thing I really want to point out, and this might not work for the Islanders, we don't know if Shabanov is going to be a successful NHL player. Frankly, when it comes to KHL players coming into the NHL, it can really be a crapshoot in terms of which ones become really skilled players, such as Artemi Panarin, and which ones kind of just completely fizzle out and become complete disasters. But one thing that is always the case is with a one-year entry-level contract, there is absolutely zero risk. If this does not work out for the Islanders, they lose absolutely nothing. They go on next season as if nothing happened, and really they lose what, $975,000, and especially when you consider that can be buried in the AHL or terminated anyway, it really does not matter for the Islanders. But the reward with a player like Shabanov is so high that you just have to take that chance, and it is really a no-brainer, especially considering this is a guy who had 67 points in 65 games for the KHL. We're going to talk about him more in just one sec, but you also have to talk about another steal from the Islanders. Apologize, my voice is a little weak. I was just at the Islanders prospect game, and later today we are going to be talking about all those prospects. There's so much more exciting to see at the game, and really I think watching some of these prospects, it really opened my eyes to some of these picks the Islanders made. It really changed my perspective, especially on the second round pick. But for now, we have to focus on another really good contract signed by Barzal today. Emil Heineman signed a 2-year extension worth $1.1 million. Appreciate Isles Rumor here for having it all in one tweet. Seems like all the other tweets I was looking around, it is really messed up and kind of split up when it came to Heineman. But this is the official contract for Heineman, and what good value. Now, Heineman was in a rough spot coming to the Islanders, as even though Barzal clearly valued him a lot and kind of forced Montreal to include him in the Dobson trade, I think it's really clear at this point that that was not a throw-in, that was something that Barzal insisted on. And this is a player who plays a really speedy game, something that's going to fit well with the Islanders, but he didn't have a lot of leverage, didn't have the best season last year, was on pace to have a decent year, and then he had an unfortunate injury, getting hit by a car in Utah, apparently. I have to read up more on that. And from there, his stats really went down. But still, looking at what he did last year, assuming that he can come back fully healthy, which I really have no doubt at, honestly, especially considering he is 23 years old, Heineman is a player who will seem to be very positive in his war, both on offense and defensively. Now, he's not going to be a play driver. I don't expect him to be a 20-goal scorer. I know we talked a little bit about that when we first acquired him. That was before I really learned more about him as a player, and I really appreciate Montreal fans who have been watching more of these videos, even after the Dobson trade, and they seem to be really in love with this player. They say he hits really hard, he skates really tough and really forechecks well, and I am very excited to have him on the bottom six for the Islanders. And if this is a guy who's going to give his heart every single shift, maybe not score 20 goals, perhaps score 15 goals, depending on where he plays in the lineup, I think he can put up 35 or so points. I don't think he's going to be a play driver. I think he is a player who can really finish plays in key opportune moments. This is going to be a really good signing for the Islanders, especially they gave up $1.1 million. I think, honestly, Heineman is quickly going to show he's worth more than that on this contract. But now we have to talk more about Shabanov, because what a steal for the Islanders bringing him in. Now, there are going to be people talking about Kirill Kaprizov and some Artemi Panarin, all these really good players from the KHL. And I do want to dial back the expectations, just because you can't put a pressure on a player to come in and be Kirill Kaprizov or Panarin right away. That is absolutely absurd. There always is the chance that he does become that. So I am really excited to watch Maxim Shabanov play for the Islanders. But it is encouraging that his chart is along the lines with some of these players. Now, you do have to put a little of cold water on that. Shabanov is a bit of a smaller player, which is going to be the biggest obstacle he's going to have to overcome coming to the Islanders. But again, this is a player that they're taking absolutely zero risk on. He is 5'8", so going to be one of the shorter players in the NHL. But when you talk about what it's going to take for a smaller player to make it in the NHL, a big thing you got to focus on is both speed and just shiftiness with their play. They're going to have to be really hard to hit, really hard to keep track of. And when you look at Shabanov, he checks those boxes. And the fact he was playing in the KHL, even though it is not the most physical league, I've watched the highlights. I've watched a lot of clips, especially after the Islanders got him. I wasn't trying to watch too much of them before they got him, because I knew I'd be disappointed, especially considering there's a lot of rumors that he was going to the Philadelphia Flyers. And then when that didn't happen, there was a lot of talk earlier this morning that he was going to go to the Rangers. In fact, Rangers Twitter, if you go now, got absolutely hyping up this guy. Then he went to the Islanders, and they instantly started trashing on him. So this is going to be really fun, especially if he hits for the Islanders, because you know Ranger fans are going to be jealous. They were fantasizing about him playing with Panarin, and now he's going to be playing on the Islanders. And this is a guy, if you just watch those highlights, he's so hard to hit. And playing those KHL minutes, there were a couple clips where people took shots at him, and he was able to evade them. He's not a physical player. This is not a guy you're putting in the lineup to make big hits. This is a player putting in the lineup to be shifty, score goals, and really cause some chaos on offense, as I think he is really hard to defend against. He is such a creative player, and the same things that make him really hard to hit also make him a really valuable player. And what I really liked watching the clips is, not that I know that much when it comes to scouting in the KHL. I don't. There's a reason why I'm making YouTube videos and I'm not a scout for one of these teams. But one thing I've noticed is a lot of the players who struggle coming out of the KHL are the ones that don't attack the front of the net. Even though Siplikov didn't have a seamless transition, I think he worked out long term because he was so good on board battles and then also attacking the front of the net, where a lot of these guys who struggle, they really spend a lot of time on the outside of the ice, and I think that's a big issue, because in the KHL the ice is bigger than NHL ice. Watching Shabanov, one thing I really noticed right away is every time he's making decent moves, he's always fighting to get to the middle. He really cuts in front of the defenders to get to the front of the net. He's not a player like Panarin who scores from the outside. He really attacks the center of the ice. And as a result, I think he's going to work in the NHL. As to what capacity, I'm really not sure. I think this depends on what role he has for the Islanders in his first season. But considering he's so young, and really how much he's improved each year in the KHL, I think the ceiling is quite high for Shabanov. Still, I'm going to guess he's going to have a 45-ish, 50-point season for the Islanders. And if they get that out of him on this first year of his contract, that's going to be absolutely insane value for the Islanders, and a really good sign of what's to come with this team, because again, Shabanov is 24 years old. We were talking in previous videos about how while the Islanders have a really good prospect pool, there's a chance that there's not going to be too much youth in the lineup this season, and that has completely been flipped on its head. Signing Shabanov, and now in addition with Emil Heineman, you have a 23 and a 24-year-old player that are getting inserted into this lineup, which all of a sudden, just looking at it, I'm trying not to get my hopes up too high, because it is the offseason. A lot can change, and more importantly, we haven't seen this group play together. But just looking at this lineup, and I think there's going to be a lot of shifting with these lines, but just looking at the top three lines, honestly the top four for the Islanders, what really stands out here is really good depth. And frankly, now that you're splitting up Bo Horvat and Matt Barzal, the issue with Brock Nelson no longer being on this team no longer seems like a major issue, because all of a sudden it seems like there's balance on this lineup again. And adding players like Shabanov, also Jonathan Drouin, really adds depth so that you can actually play them separately and still have scoring on both lines. In the past, it's really felt like you could split up Matt Barzal and Bo Horvat, but then neither of them are going to be as effective. And depending on who can find chemistry with who this season, that can really change. I mean, we've already seen Lee Horvat and Palmieri play well together. If Barzal can find chemistry with Drouin and Holmstrom, or even with Shabanov, because honestly, having a shifty player like him play with Barzal, again, one thing I haven't talked about enough is Shabanov seems to have a really effective shot. He does seem to prefer to pass and play make and make dekes, but he can shoot. And also, if you're wondering, knowing that the Islanders have a huge problem when it comes to the shootout, if he's in the lineup, they are no longer going to have an issue with shootouts. That is all I have to say about this player. Really, this is a team that's starting to look like it can contend for the playoffs. And when we were talking about being competitive earlier in the season, I thought it was more like, oh, well, they're not going to be a complete pushover. Looking at the depth of this lineup, not only is there a lot of talent, there's a lot of young players. Like, you see a lot of players who are 24, Holmstrom, Shabanov. This is a really exciting team, and frankly, there are other players who aren't even on this list. It is going to be cutthroat at training camp, and I just love what Darsh has done with this team. There's so much more to talk about, but for now, I'm just going to leave it at that. I love what Darsh has done for the Islanders. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say this is an absolute masterclass, and perhaps the best case scenario we could have hoped for when he took over this team. And there are so many more prospects on the way, so much to look excited for. Just think about what has happened since this Islanders offseason. Yes, they traded away Noah Dobson, and that is going to sting. As much as we criticize him on the channel, he still brought value. But then you bring in Schaefer, Eklund, Aitchison, now Drouin and Shabanov. You're both building the future of this team while making it competitive the next season, which is something I really did not think was possible. And I take it back. Clearly, Darsh knows what he's doing, at least in my opinion. Let me know, what do you think of the start of Mathew Darsh's tenure as a New York Islanders general manager? Personally, I am so depressed, but I'd love to know what you think in the comments below. What do you think of this signing for the Islanders? I am so excited to see what happens this season. It's a shame we have to wait the entire summer, but let me know what you think in the comments below. As always, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. My name is Patrick Nilan. Catch you on the next episode of Islanders Digest. Let's go, Islanders.